Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. We've got a great guest for you today. It really is a heartfelt story because it goes back a number of years. And but I want to tell you the outcome of it today is that even though he is classified as a disabled person, he doesn't view it that way because he skis, he climbs rocks, and he rock climbs, and he white rudder kayaks, skydives, really, and even competes in Brazilian jiu-jitsu against other practitioners who do not have the same disabilities that he does, or challenges, I suppose, that he does. His name is Zach Tidwell, and Zach, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you today, sir?
I am pretty good, and thank you for that. I think it's disabilities. We can call them what they are, but how are you doing?
I'm doing awesomely, thank you. And I've got my own disabilities. My right arm is in a cast, and but we all have disabilities of one form or another. But it's what we choose to do with them after we have them, or how we can negotiate through life. And you're doing some really pretty remarkable things. Would you like to take a moment and tell us your story?
Yeah, I guess. Do you want me to go real succinct here, and then you can ask questions, like give you a quick rundown, or we just start going through it?
Just go through it, and and I'll interject, and we'll talk about it and stuff like that. And because and I can help if you'd like, which is that you were in the Marine Corps. And by the way, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you for the support.
And and so you were in the Marine Corps, and I assume that you were deployed.
Yeah. So I think we already said this, but my name is Zach Tidwell, and I was in the Marines for 4 years, and I was a machine gunner, but I didn't see combat. Both of my deployments were into the Pacific, and so when I wound up in a bad spot by the time that I had gotten out. So I was married, and on my second deployment, I found out that my wife was cheating on me, and I found out from the other guy's wife. So that was a pretty fun one. But I came back from that deployment at the end of 2017 and tried to make things work with my wife, and they didn't. So I separated from her in January, and then in January of 2018, and then I was not in a great spot, but was coping just by keeping myself very, very busy. And whether that be the gym, I was training for a half marathon and doing all sorts of other stuff. And I was also taking my motorcycle to the racetrack on weekends when we weren't in the field. And in March of 2018, so about 2 months after I separated from her and was filing for divorce, I was actually in a really bad motorcycle accident and earned myself a traumatic brain injury. So that kind of, after that, everything shifted for me, and I started to struggle with depression and sleeping issues. And then I started, it was like a total shift in my personality. I became very agitated and very impulsive, and started self-medicating with alcohol at first so I could sleep. And then that became my crutch, and I wasn't speaking up about it because I thought it was weak. So that carried on through August of 2018, which is when I was honorably discharged. So I came back home to Colorado, started going to college and working, and was progressively getting worse and worse because I was drinking away my issues instead of actually confronting them, thinking that they would just, I thought that what I was going through was what people go through when they get cheated on and get divorced. So I thought it would pass and didn't realize that I didn't have any real healthy coping skills at the time. So by the time that March of 2019 rolled around, on the 27th of March, I decided that I didn't want to be here anymore, and I cleared out my gun and held it to my head. And that's the first time in my life that I had ever mishandled a firearm. I wasn't intending to kill myself that night, but I knew it was like a light had been turned on, and all of a sudden I had my way out. And it's crazy to say, but because it's an insane thought. But I seriously, I felt relief in that moment because I knew that there was a way out, because it felt like the place that I was in was inescapable. And I didn't know when I was going to do it, but I knew I was going to shoot myself in the head. And that's what I did 4 days later on March 31st of 2019. I held the gun, tuned my eyes, and pulled the trigger. And that was, I thought that was it. But I awoke sometime later, being taken off of life support. I was completely blind, deaf in one ear, and in need of a facial reconstruction surgery, because the bridge of my nose, my forehead, the lower part of my forehead, my sinuses, and my right eye socket were all basically gone.
Now, when this happened and you woke up, that must have been a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, it went, and it's funny. I was so out of it I think from a combination of all the medications that I was on and having been in a medically induced coma. And then also just, I would imagine shooting yourself in the head is about the worst brain injury that you can get. It's other, getting blown up, or a bullet to the dome will do that to you. But I was kind of so out of it from all that I didn't even realize I was totally blind. I knew that I had shot myself. I didn't remember the details, but basically anytime someone came into the room, they were like checking my cognition and seeing if I knew where I was and why I was there. And so no one really knew what was going to happen. At first, they didn't know if I was going to live, and they didn't know if I was going to be a vegetable. And then once they knew I wasn't going to be a vegetable, they didn't know if I was going to have my personality. And so when they brought me off, and I was still me, like that was at least something. And they also thought that we knew my right eye was screwed, because my right optic nerve got severed completely by the bullet. But they thought that I was going to get some sight back in my left eye when they did my facial reconstruction surgery, and that turned out not to be the case. But so there was some hope, I guess, early on, that there was going to be some normalcy still. And I think the combination of that, and even as I came to and did realize sometime later that I was blind, it was the pace of everything in the hospital. There was so much going on. I mean, it was constant appointments, whether I was going in for another scan, or OT was coming in, or speech therapy was coming in, or real therapy was coming in, or physical therapy. It was constant. I didn't actually have time to stop and register anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you were in therapy heaven, as they say, because you had therapy from everybody.
Oh yeah, it was nonstop. It was exhausting, and it was, we were kind of starting from square one with everything. I had to learn how to feed myself and how to brush my teeth. And at first, I couldn't even sit up in bed. I had to figure out how to do that. And then it was standing next to the bed. Okay, my body can't take that. So, eventually it went to walking, and then learning everything else. It was a very slow process, but just like, it was like a full-time job of trying to heal in the hospital before I had the facial reconstruction, so that the stage was kind of set for me to go into actual rehab once all was said and done and I was healed up.
Well, when I was a kid, I was I was a boxer, and I had my cheek broken and stuff. I can only imagine, as painful as that was, all the pain that you were going through, with your face being disfigured the way it was, with so many broken bones and all of that kind of stuff. So that takes a while to recover from.
it was a mess. It was just, and I was so nauseous. I mean, I've had head injuries before, but again, that's definitely the worst one that I've had. And it was just any sort of movement would make me feel sick. I mean, it was just an excruciating pain. And then twice a day, because I didn't have the facial reconstruction until roughly 40 days later. I was in the hospital for a total of 51 days, but it was in the time in between when I shot myself and the time when they actually put me back together. They were changing. They kept the bullet hole open and they were just packing it with antiseptic gauze, and they were doing that twice a day. And I was awake for it. And that, pain wise, I mean, that tops the scale for me. They were just, it was excruciating. But we got through it, and like I said, 51 days later, was out of the hospital, and I was home for a month after that, and then went to blind rehab to learn how to be blind for 2.5 months. I know the VA gets a lot of flack, and even I have my own issues with the VA, like as a whole. But what they are really good at is their rehab services, and especially the blind rehab. I mean, it's some of the best blind rehabilitation services in the world are through the VA. And so I basically went to school full time. It switched from all these different kinds of therapies to different classes on learning how to be blind for 2.5 months, where 7 hours a day on weekdays, I was learning how to cook and how to use a cane and how to use access technology so I could use a computer, and how I would be independent again. And that just, I kept pushing forward from that. So it wound up being the case that, so I shot myself on March 31st of 2019. In December, I was snowboarding again. A month after that, I was back in college. And 6 months after that, I was back out on my own. I just kept pushing forward.
And by the way, we're talking with Zach Tidwell, and go to his website, which is zachtidwell.com, or excuse me, .net. And you can find out all about him and the work he's doing. But I got to ask you, Zach, at one point in your recovery after the accident, and I call it an accident because you were not in the right frame of mind at the moment and stuff, and you'd had some really horrific things happen to you and stuff. And we're going to talk about that and how you're helping other people. But at one point in time, you must have said to yourself, okay, I tried to end it and was unsuccessful. There must be a reason why I'm still here. Did that thought ever cross your mind?
No, I've had people say that to me a lot. Like that comes up a lot, where it's like, okay, well, it must have been for a reason. And I went from what I thought was the lowest point in my life of being there with the gun in my hand, getting ready to pull the trigger, and then I wake up and I've somehow reached a lower one. Because now I can't do anything for myself. I can't see anything, and I'm deaf in one ear. I mean, and no sense of smell because all those nerves are gone. My sense of taste is very dull because I have no sense of smell and all the nerve damage in my face. And it was what did occur, and this, some of it early on was because there was light at the end of the tunnel of, we don't know how much sight I'm going to get back, but I'm going to get some back in that left eye. And but that got kind of dropped in our lap a couple weeks into the hospital stay, where that wasn't the case. And like I immediately I had this fire lit under me, where just because I had done this to myself, and I don't call it an accident because it wasn't. And I totally agree with you. I was not in a sane state of mind. And I think that's the case for anyone who reaches that point where if you get to a place where you think the only way out and the rational way out of the mental state that you're in is to kill yourself, that you're obviously no longer in a sane state of mind. That flies in the face of any logical thinking, and also like what our instincts and our genes are coded to do. We are coded to preserve our own lives and spread our own DNA. And killing yourself obviously kind of gets in the way of both of those things. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, it was, yeah,
Well, but at the same time, Zach, you were like we talked about. You were um, in the um, um, in the military. You were, and so because of that, there are so many guys that are coming back that have got problems from their service in the Marine Corps or the Army or wherever it was, and we're losing a lot of guys virtually every day. I think the statistics
It
are
is
like,
every day. It's more than 22 a day,
yeah, and we're
and that's
losing
just American veterans.
exactly, and so we're losing all these guys, and all of them had the sense. I'm guessing, and I don't know because I've never been in the military, but a lot of them apparently had a sense of helplessness that they couldn't get through it, and they couldn't get help, and say they really honestly saw no way out. My brother-in-law did. He took his life, and he believed that he had no way out. Is that part of it? Is that you didn't think that you had any way out, and this would be the logical next step?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at with this. When you reach the point that that is the case, you're obviously not in the state of mind, and that like I agree with you in that sense. That obviously you're not thinking straight, and that's I think though. I mean that anguish of depression like that, and I don't use the term depression lightly. Even now, they I still go through very difficult ruts, and it's a byproduct of having brain injuries. Like, it is something that I've learned that I have, and I know how to navigate it, and I've learned the skills for it. But back then I didn't have the skills. I think that is an issue where a lot of I, I'm sure where or how a lot of people end up in that place. And what I can speak to for veterans specifically, and this is just I've thought about this a lot. I've talked about it a lot. So it's the place of experience that I can speak from. And again, I'm not a combat vet, but I think a reason that it is so common amongst military, aside from, and in first responders as well, aside from the things that some service members and some first responders see is in those environments. Like, I thought personally that because I had done so well in the Marines, and the way that I had done that was just by kind of gritting my teeth and being like a bull in the china shop, just getting through things and just mind over mattering my way through things, that would apply to mental health. And those things, those don't equate, right? Like, doing
Nope.
physically and mentally challenging and hardcore things that can be mind over matter. But when you're dealing with these chemical imbalances, and obviously what for me turned into real insane trains of thought, that's a different ballgame. And you have to address whatever is contributing to those issues. Otherwise, it will fester. And especially when you're adding, like, in that culture, and this is not me taking a dig at the military. I think these environments to have a successful military, to have hard people who can do the job when it needs to be done and do what needs to be done just at the drop of a hat, you need to have that environment where, all right, suck it up, buttercup. But you don't realize when you go back to a civilian world that that's not going to serve you when you're not in that environment. Right?
Nope.
I think that's what gets.
It's nope. It's not. We need to take a break, Zach, real quick. But when we come back, I want to talk about the mindset and I don't know if I would call it a brainwashing, but I think it's kind of close because they need a certain outcome from every soldier that they have, and so they need a certain mindset that you're right. It may translate into the world that they are in, because at any one point you don't know when you're going to have to go into combat and stuff, but it doesn't serve you well when you're back, with us people who don't get that. So we need to take a quick break, and Zach, Tidwell is with us, and we're going to talk more in just a second.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We're talking with Zach Tidwell. He's got quite a story. He was a Marine Corps vet, and he came back, and his marriage didn't work out, and he had, I'm sure he had PTSD and depression and other than all of that, and now he's really has done some remarkable things. Do you, Zach, looking back and looking at your life today, do you recognize how remarkable you are?
I'm horrible at taking compliments because they make me uncomfortable.
Okay,
So
then just say
I,
yes. Thank you.
I'm proud of what I've done. Yes,
As well. You should have.
and I want to just you said something. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. I do not have PTSD. I'm not a combat veteran. I know I've said that a couple times here, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm not misleading people.
Well, now let me explain what I mean by that. There are people, women and men, who have suffered traumatic things in their life or have had a traumatic moment in time. Doesn't have to be combat, doesn't have to be particularly bloody, but it can be something that affects us individually, and it can be traumatic or whatever. And a lot of times what they're discovering is that causes PTSD or another form of it, because, and not because, but so you were not a combat vet, but you did have lots of things that are going on in and around your service and your life and stuff that can contribute to all of that. And if that makes any sense. Now, I'm not a therapist and I can't diagnose anything like that, but that's my sense of it. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And this is just, and I'm not trying to like be a stickler here. I hear people throwing that stuff around, and I wanted to make sure that I'm not misleading someone in thinking that, but also, I've heard people telling their own stories and saying that where like it's not a clinical definition of PTSD, and when people, and I'm not saying you just did that, but like when other people do stuff like that and are not using it just figuratively, but are trying to like speak literally and say that they have it, they don't. I think that devalues what that means for people who do actually have it. I think we have culturally, there is this thing that people do where they want to assign these different diagnoses to themselves so that it's like a credentialing kind of thing. And so that was a knee-jerk reaction on my part, I guess. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure you knew I wasn't like attacking what you said.
Well, no, and neither of us are psychologists. All I can tell you is that there are lots of folks that have gone through trauma and it has affected them negatively for the rest of their life, whatever you call it. And I don't want to put a label on it either.
Yeah, I agree with you. But
but it's,
yeah, where do you want to go from here?
Well, I want to go next is the fact that you have done some things, young man, and you went down from the brink and even lower than you thought that you could go, and now you're back up and operating. And tell me about Dark Horse Dark Horse Game Studios. What is that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take you down the path to how we got to there because there's more shenanigans in here. So
Okay.
I think we kind of got through, I guess that would have been, I think it was like June of 2020 when I got back out on my own, right? So I was back in college at this point. December of that year, I bought my first house. And then I really started to, that's kind of when things really started to register for me, how different my life was. And, had some struggles, but that rolled through all the way to the middle of 2021, where, I'd come out of this really dark rut that I think was the worst depression I've ever dealt with. And I say that even though I had shot myself, because I dealt with it at that time. And that was the first time that I'd gotten through it was months where I did not want to be alive, but I actually had learned my lesson from when I shot myself, and I got through it, and it was a huge learning experience for me. But in the middle of 2021, I had reached my first math class, which is since being in college, since being blind, and my college stopped making my materials accessible, and they assigned some to be my eyeballs instead. And so I couldn't do anything myself. Like, the student was reading huge data sets to me so I could do these calculations, because it was a statistics class, and then entering all of the answers for me, and it drove me nuts. But what it drove me to look into as well, because I was fully independent at this point, but now all of a sudden I was beholden to people again, and that I couldn't take it. So I started researching what caused those issues. Like, how come I could order my groceries on one website but not another, and how come I could do my English homework but not my math homework, in whatever context? How come some software was accessible with my screen reading software, and how come others weren't? And I found out that it came down to the code running behind the scenes of each app or website. So developers have to take specific steps to make their software accessible to different access technologies, whether it's screen readers like I use, or magnification software, or voice control software. And this is a huge issue. Most software is not accessible. Like, by and large, that is a fact. And I had gotten a taste of that, and I decided that I wanted to become part of the solution. So I dropped out of college and started teaching myself how to code in October of 2021. At that same time, I picked up alcohol again, and that was having not realized that I was an alcoholic leading up to the point when I shot myself. I was a functioning alcoholic back then. And being blind, I turned into a not so functioning alcoholic. But, at its worst, it got to the point where I was blackout binging for 2 or 3 days straight, taking 2 or 3 days off to recover from the hangover, and then doing it all over again. I just couldn't stop. And it was actually in 2022, I went to rehab, and this whole time in between, when I was coherent and not passed out drunk, I was teaching myself how to code like a full-time job. I was just reading articles online and learning how to code. But I went to rehab, and while I was there, was diagnosed with Huntington's disease, which is a degenerative neurological disease that will ultimately kill me down the road. So, being in the state of a raging alcoholic, that just kind of fueled the fire when I got back from rehab. So I kept struggling with that, but kept teaching myself how to code. And all the way, that took us through to July of 2023. I had founded Dark Horse Game Studios. I taught myself how to code. I released my first app, which was a word puzzle game, which at face value is pretty simple, but the big kicker was that it looked and functioned normally for people without disabilities. So you could have played it and you never would have known that there was anything special about it. But it was also accessible to virtually any disability. So whether someone was colorblind, it would adapt to that. If you were low vision and needed magnification or high contrast, it would adapt to that. If you were totally blind, worked with your screen reader. If you were totally blind and totally deaf, you could use it with Braille. If you had no arms, you could use it with your voice, and on and on and on. And it started getting this really positive feedback from people. And that's when I started making progress with my sobriety. And gosh, I strung together like a month of sobriety, and then I fell off the wagon. And then I made it 2.5 months, and then I fell off the wagon. And then that last time that I fell off the wagon was December 5th. No, that's my sober date. It's December 5th of 2023. And then at the end of that year, I actually won 2 Game of the Year awards for my work with Xanagrams, which was that debut app under Dark Horse Game Studios. So that is my own company. That is my own software. And from there, I started writing my book that next month in January of 2024. That's now finished, and I'm right now going back and forth for contracts with an editor and a team so that I can start hopefully getting the ball rolling to get that thing published through this year, or hopefully before the end of this year. I'm also building another piece of software that I've been working on for the past a little over a year now that I'm hoping to turn into a true startup instead of just a solo developer working with a little one-man company and pushing forward with all of the things.
Well, and I hope you do realize that not everybody can code, and I don't care if you can see or not. There's a certain thing going on with that where I talk to guys like you, and it's like, what do you do? And then they start telling me, and I have no idea what they're talking about.
Your eyes just glaze over.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, thanks. I still don't know what you do, but thank you for telling me. And I think a lot of us are like that. So you have a gift for it. You recognize that, right?
It's been like it's kind of wild. This is absolutely never something that I would have done before. Again, like machine gunner in the Marines, and then when I got out, I was going to college for nursing. I wanted to be an ER nurse, so like it still wasn't even down this vein. And I had actually looked up at one point when I could see, like, okay, I think I was playing Angry Birds on my phone. I was like, how the hell do people make these things? And so like I Googled it and saw a screenshot of code and was like, that looks like it sucks. Okay, on to the next thing. And then of course years later now, this is what I do, and it's weird. I'm addicted to it, man. It is a passion. Yeah, I coded for 12 hours yesterday. Like okay. It's just I can't get enough of it, and it's like it's been this weird. Like it has become my purpose now is eliminating these barriers for other people and giving people access to the world who don't normally get it, and that's powerful.
That's a really big deal.
Yeah, and it just for me, me having something, because I had lost my identity when I lost everything else. Because like all of a sudden, I didn't feel like a man because I couldn't take care of myself. I didn't, I had gotten out of the Marines, so that wasn't my thing anymore. I couldn't be a nurse because you can't do that if you can't see anything. And like I had floundered. I was just an alcoholic for a little bit there, and like I was teaching myself how to code, but like there wasn't anything tangible to it. And it was once it started having an impact on other people, it's like it was this, I get so much fulfillment out of it. And so like it's helping other people, and especially this new project that I've been working on is in the education space, and I want to fix some of the issues that I had while I was in college, because people with disabilities have enough challenges and shouldn't have to also jump through hoops to do everything. Our life is already just inherently a little more difficult. Things take us a little longer, but it's also more than that. This is cutting edge technology that people without disabilities will be able to use, and that's the linchpin here, is that everyone should have access to the same shit within reason. Like, obviously, I'm not going to be driving a car, and like, no, that doesn't make sense for me to have to say that like I should have rights to drive a car until 30 years from now when we have true self-driving cars. But this is something where everyone deserves an equal shot at getting a real education and a real career as a result of that education. And so it's been this really cool thing that it pulled me out of alcoholism. It really did.
Exactly. And by the way, we again are talking with Zach Tidwell. Go to his website, zachtidwell.net. And one of the things you say there that we're going to talk about when we come back, because I think it's really important is that you are transforming minds and empowering lives. And had you not had everything that has happened to you, you would have had no earthly idea what any of that would have meant. And now you do. We need to take a quick break, and we will be right back more with Zach right after this.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We've got a great guest for you today, and a horribly and wonderful life story that he has. And his name is Zach Tidwell. Go to his website again, which is zachtidwell.net, and you can find out all about him and his story, which is, I got to tell you, Zach, and I know you don't like to take compliments well, but you have had an extraordinary life, and it's been difficult. It's been painful. It's been positive. You're changing the world. You're helping people in ways that you never thought was something that you're going to contribute to. Do you feel good about that? Do you recognize all of that now that you're in the midst of doing what you're doing?
Thank you for for all that. And yeah, I do. Again, I'm proud of where I am. It's just, it feels weird with having it. Like, I'm very, very hard on myself. And
Don't be.
I'm absolutely my own worst critic on things. So like, it is weird, I guess, when other people say that stuff and there's no internal dialogue attached to it. It kind of gets me off guard a little bit. But yeah, thank you.
Well, the interesting thing about that is, and this goes towards everybody who's listening to this, is that regardless of what experiences that you're going through and how difficult that they can be, there is a way for you to get through it. Sometimes it takes help. It might take rehab. It takes learning something new that you never thought that you could do. Because I'm telling you, Zach, learning code and then applying it to an app and then making it so that anybody can use it regardless of their disability or where they're at, that's a really big deal. And then to win awards for it and stuff, it really is a cool thing, because there's somebody, and I know you recognize this, there's somebody who's going to use your app and is going to say, thank God that this guy created that, because now it makes me feel just a little bit more normal.
Yeah, and like getting emails and stuff like that from people when my first app came out was the confirmation that I was on the right path, and it was stuff like that. It was even stuff as simple as like, hey, I can enjoy this with my wife. Thank you. I haven't been able to do this in years or whatever. It is, and it's that normalcy. I think it's huge, having a sense of normalcy and just not, I don't know, being excluded from things because of your disability sucks. And obviously some of that stuff is just, it's inherent as a result of your disability. Like, I can't go look at art at an art museum, obviously, but there's some areas like in the digital world where that doesn't need to be the case and can actually just be a force multiplier for people.
Well,
software developers are doing the right thing.
you're a young man, and it's not going to be in the too distant future when they're going to have technology that's going to help you with your eyesight and to live a little bit more normal life and stuff. So you're in the right age group where AI is going to come along or is coming along and doing some great stuff. You're doing some great work. You might be able to even create something yourself over time that would help you and other people that are in your situation.
Yeah, it would be wild. I know Neuralink was supposed to be going into. They've already implanted in humans to help try and mitigate or lend more access to people's spinal cord injuries, but they were supposed to be going into trials for people to fix their eyesight as well. So I do think at some point in my lifetime, I'll probably be able to see again in some way, shape, or form, even if it is all grainy and low fidelity. But that, or the car thing, I believe I'll be able to drive again at some point too, which is kind of wild. It is. There's never been a better time to be blind than right now.
Well, and I'll tell you this: there are videos that I get to watch that just make me cry like a baby because somebody who has been deaf their whole life and they have no idea, and then they do these implants and now they can hear, and they can hear their loved one or their mom or their dad talk to them in mom and dad's voice for the very first time. It is a very uplifting thing to watch, and that's the good part about our technology, and I hope that it is going to be available for you to help you at one point, because you've got so much talent, you've got so much going for you, and I know that not too long ago, because that you wouldn't have said any of those things, but I'm here to tell you that there are people going, man, what a resilient, tough guy with grit that has not given up, that has decided that he's going to do it. Have you had setbacks? You're human, ain't you? We all have setbacks, but you've worked through it, and now you're doing real well. And I'm sure your sobriety is doing well, and your creativity is. You coded for 12 hours yesterday. Come on, really?
I mean, yeah. I would say 8 hours of coding is short for me on a day, like when I'm home and in my normal routine. I hit it pretty hard. Again, I want to bring these things to fruition. I'm giving it all I got to try, and especially with this new business, to try and get this thing off the ground and make it work, because, even if like the odds of it working out are slim, it's hard to build a company, but if it doesn't go somewhere, I know that I've given it all that I can, and then worst comes to worst, I've learned something, and we'll have that knowledge to roll into the next endeavor here. I mean, I will never stop creating things. Now, this is absolutely, I have found my path of where I can have a huge impact on other people's lives, and I get so much joy out of that. And, the other, on the flip side of that, is also being able to share my experiences and show people, there's probably someone listening to this who is at a horrendously low point. And you mentioned it earlier, you have to realize that you can get through it, and that it can and will get better, and that sometimes you need help. But that's the thing, is if you do not speak up, no one can help you, because no one will know that you're struggling. That took me a long time to learn. Obviously, that took me shooting myself in the face to learn, and then dealing with everything afterwards. But you are that person, you owe that to yourself to speak up and to ask for help, and there will be people there to do it. You have to let somebody know, and know that it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be comfortable, and sometimes it will feel like you're going backwards, but you will come out on the other side of it.
Well, and I got to tell you, you were a Marine, and guys that were Marines are taught that they are strong, that they don't need any help, that they don't need anybody to go cry on their shoulder, because real men and Marines don't cry on anybody's shoulder. They make other
And
people
we're
cry.
so handsome.
And you're so handsome and God-given and strong, and you got six-pack abs and all that stuff. And the reality is that we all need other people, and we need folks that can be around and support us and stuff like that. And it's yours is a remarkable story, and I know you've got a book coming out. Is it an autobiography?
It is a memoir, and I know that I'm going to. I'm 29 years old. I've got a lot of time left in front of me. I think to write a biography at 29 would be silly, but it is an exploration specifically kind of everything that led up to the suicide attempt and everything that has happened along the way since, everything that I've learned and how I've done it. Not in a self-help way, just in a way that, the humorous take on very dark stuff. And I hope it will get conversation started, because I think the way that we keep more people from going down the path that I went down is to talk about this more and to be able to have these hard discussions. And so it talks about all that, the addiction, getting sober, and, some of the tough realities that came along the way, like friends and family having to set boundaries with me when, they're terrified that I'm going to drink myself to death, but me doing that to them and pulling them into it is kind of ripping them apart. And it's just a lot of heavy stuff that I try and approach in a funny way, because it's going someone else reading that, or someone who has read that, like it's going to save lives.
And by the way, if you're listening to this and you are former military or in the military, or you are just feeling low and you need somebody to talk to, I want you to write this number down, 988. It's a national hotline, and I think it's still operating. I hope it's still operating. And
It is.
And it is designed to help you. If you are, by the way, in the military or former military, 988, and then hit the number 1, and you'll talk to somebody who can help you find resources to get the help that you need so that you can live the life that you were intended to live. And so 988, is that a good thing to tell people?
Yes, and I've called that number one time, and they, it was incredible. Like I needed it at the time. They do get you connected with services. They, like, specifically for me, because I used the veteran crisis line, which is pushing 1, like you said. They got me connected. The VA followed up with me the next day, got me in for services. No one's going to come to your house and rip you out. Like I was terrified to speak up for a long time when I struggled after being blind, because I thought someone was going to pull me out of my house and put me in a padded room and sedate me until someone thought I was fit to be out in society again. That's not what it is. They're there to help you. They are there to get you through the crisis and then connect you with resources. So absolutely use that.
And by the way, just so you know, and we need to take our final break, but we all have got moments in time that are not good for us, and where we've had some things go wrong, and we question our worth and who we are, and wouldn't it be so much easier if I just wasn't here, and stuff, and get those thoughts out of your head, because they don't serve you. And because I can tell you this, there's somebody that is playing Zach's game somewhere in America right now who wouldn't be able to play that game if Zach had been able to follow through and end his life. Because so it's valuable, and everybody has value, and you can do something remarkable, like Zach is in the process of doing. It's so unfair. You're only 29. You've got tons of wonderful life ahead of you, and I'm so glad that you've taken the time to be here. We need to take this quick break, and then we'll be back with our last segment with Zach Tidwell. and go to his website, which is zachtidwell.net. And we'll be right back.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And that, by the way, that's me. And Zach Tidwell is with us. Go to his website, zachtidwell.net. By the way, the book is in, they say, the editing stage and its final processes. What's the name of the book?
So it's in the very beginning of the editing. So I'm literally like, we're in the process of getting these contracts signed so that I can start making those final polishes and working with the editor. But it is called Raw Dog, a blind Marine's journey to death's door and back.
That is a great title. And by the way, I would not be a bit surprised if that was made into a movie.
We'll see. That would be mind blowing, to be honest. But yeah.
Well, you've already done it. You've already done some mind blowing things, young man. You know.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be. I don't know. That seems like too crazy to happen, but that would be cool.
Well, but you see, stories like yours, first of all, they don't happen every day. And secondly, not only have you risen above it, but your tenacity. By the way, that's one of the things that made you a great Marine, is that your tenacity and your grit and your desire to not give up, and you're going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And that's a real positive trait in a human.
Yeah, my time in the Marines still serves me every day. I mean, I am such a big proponent of people. It doesn't have to be the Marine Corps, but just going to the military. Like, if you're coming out of high school and not necessarily sure what to do, or I grew up in a military family, so I always wanted to be like my dad, and I wanted to go into the military. But again, if you're not sure what you want to do, it's such a great life experience, and really, it's formative years teach you some very great habits and good skills, and can kind of set you up for success just everywhere else in your life.
And they still have something called the Job Corps. I didn't even know that was still around, but that's so. If rather than, and this is just me speaking, rather than you getting out of high school and then going to college and having no idea what you're going to do, why don't you take a couple of years and serve humanity, and then maybe you'll have a better idea of what it is you want to do. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, if you think about it, I mean, if you're going to go, it's wild. Like, it's wild that 18-year-olds can dump tens of thousands of dollars into a college education. And I'm like, just doing it on a whim or you're guessing that is what you actually want to do. And with that being the only debt that never leaves you, even if you file for bankruptcy, your student loan debt will follow you to the day you die. They will collect off your Social Security when you're in retirement. And it's like, yeah, take some time and go find out what's actually a passion for you, and where you really get your jollies off at professionally, and like something that'll get you excited and go to work every day. And like, yeah, it's still going to be a job, whatever career field you go into. Like, I don't love coding every second of coding, but I love it's the idea of what the end goal will mean that carries you forward in times like that. And that's what passion is and purpose is. And that you taking advantage of that discovery time when you're young, I think, is crucial. And I don't think it's talked about very often. It's just our culture kind of pushes you towards college. Like, that seems like a thing that you have to do. And I think that's definitely a worthwhile thing to do. But yeah, maybe after a delay for some self-discovery.
Self-discovery, and even trade school. We're gonna I don't know about you, but there are a lot of old plumbers that are running around and old electricians, and the kids are being told, you don't want to do that. Well, the pay's good, the hours are decent, and stuff. So explore rather than just get niched into something that you have no idea. Explore around, take a couple of jobs, do some service work and stuff like that. And by the way, I wanted to make sure we got this out before we end up, because we are going to be ending up here in a minute. Zach, you also are a public speaker, correct?
Yes, something I haven't done a ton of it, but something I'm intentionally moving a little more into and trying to start to pursue more.
You will have an impact anytime you're in front of a room. And I think it's important. So if you want to talk to Zach about booking your event, again, go to zachtidwell.net. He's a phenomenal young man. He's had challenges, but now he's done he's done some things that guys have waited their whole life to do, and he's only 29. Dang it. So congratulations, Zach. You are I'm really proud to know you. I really am.
I appreciate you, man. These are uncomfortable conversations. I think you being willing to have it and even sharing about your brother-in-law taking his life, and I would love to dive into that. I know we're on a time crunch here, but thank you for doing that. Like these conversations need to be had, and someone will hear this that needed to hear that, and they will go get help.
Yeah, I can tell his story just real briefly. His wife of 20 years had a congenital heart problem, and she wasn't expected to live a full life, and so at 40, she went into the emergency room, and they ended up in the ICU, and she died like 12 times, and then she finally passed away. And so he was all alone, and he started getting bills from the hospital of $250,000 and $350,000, and then he tried to have a girlfriend, and she stole some money from him, and then he had problems with his job, and he was scared he was going to lose his job, and then his dad was telling him that he needed to buck up and stuff, and so he got angry one day, and at his kitchen table, put a gun to his chest and pulled the trigger, and that was the end. And the interesting thing about that was he and I witnessed a suicide years before of somebody that we knew, and I was just taken aback that he knew how devastating it is for the families and for the people who love you when that happens, and stuff. So he was angry, and I get it. But I wish he'd have reached out, you know, and then maybe the outcome would have been different.
Yeah, and I mean that sounds again like that. You're past the point of sane thought, right? Like you're not in a sane state of mind anymore. That's just
Yep. And I think
unfortunately not.
he was so mad at his dad and at the job and at his wife for leaving him and the girlfriend for stealing from him. And basically he had said, well, screw you all, and the horse you rode in on, I'm out of here.
That's that's sad.
Yeah, it really is.
One.
It really is. But Zach, you are a shining star. You are doing some great work. Are you still there?
Yes. Did I
Good.
cut out?
Yeah, no, I apparently I did, but no, you're still doing great. I'm so proud to know you, and I want to thank you for being here. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, just again, if you Google me and you can find me wherever, but if you are that person who's struggling, you owe it to yourself and those around you to come out on the other side. You have to speak up and accept help to do that. So reach out, tell somebody.
And
Yeah, thank you, man.
if you got nobody, call 988. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah.
And you have a wonderful day, and I'm looking forward to your next app. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.